When you stand before the mirror of your soul, do you dare to see what looks back at you? I ask you this because every empath, every soul who claims to feel the pain of others so deeply must eventually face a truth that is not written in the light, but etched into the shadows. We often speak of the empath as a savior, as the one who can heal, love, and forgive endlessly. But have you ever asked yourself, what drives this sensitivity? What secret wound breathes beneath your compassion? What is the price of feeling so deeply? The world will tell you that the empath is a beacon of light, but I'm here to tell you that there is a dark mirror within that light, a reflection no one dares to speak about. When I first studied the movements of the human psyche, I discovered that the unconscious is not a passive force. It is alive, breathing, shaping your choices without your awareness. The empath, perhaps more than anyone else, is caught between two worlds, the realm of conscious goodness and the underground rivers of the shadow. This shadow is not merely evil or destructive. It is a treasury of everything you have rejected, disowned, and banished from your conscious identity. For the empath, the shadow often holds a truth. They are terrified to confront that their endless giving may not be a pure act of love, but a way of avoiding their own darkness, their own unmet needs. You may believe that your ability to absorb the emotions of others is a divine gift. But I tell you, it can also be a chain. I have seen people bleed themselves dry in the name of empathy, pouring out all of their energy into others, yet feeling hollow and unseen. Why? Because they have mistaken their light for virtue while refusing to acknowledge that their sensitivity is also a shield, a mask that keeps them from looking inward. The shadow side of the empath is not malevolence. It is neglect, the neglect of one's own soul, one's own fire, one's own individuality. In this neglect grows resentment, exhaustion, and a hidden rage that few will admit. When I speak of the shadow, I do not speak of something external. The shadow is not out there, it is you. It is the part of you that does not bow to your conscious morality. It is the part that hungers, that envies, that hates, that desires to say no when all you have ever said is yes. And if you do not meet this shadow, if you do not integrate it, it will eventually rise like a storm and consume you from within. How many empaths, I wonder, have broken under the weight of their own unacknowledged pain, smiling for the world while secretly drowning. The unconscious will reveal itself through dreams, symbols, and encounters that disturb you. Have you ever dreamt of being chased, of being devoured, of standing in a room filled with mirrors where every reflection was slightly distorted? These are not meaningless visions. These are messages from the dark mirror of your psyche. They tell you that what you cannot face consciously is seeking you in the hidden corners of your soul. For the empath, these dreams often take the shape of being overwhelmed, of being consumed by others, of losing one's voice. Why? Because deep down, the empath fears their own power, their own capacity for anger, for boundaries, for saying, I exist beyond your pain. I have often said that individuation, The journey toward wholeness is not a path for the faint of heart. It requires a confrontation with the shadow, not a polite conversation with it. You must be willing to stand before that dark mirror and see not only your light, but the raw, unrefined truth of who you are. For the empath, this means asking, what am I running from? When I immerse myself in the suffering of others, what part of me is afraid to be seen as selfish, as Unkind, as human? Many empaths hide behind the role of the giver because it protects them from being judged. But this mask comes at a cost. When you suppress your shadow, it will not vanish. It will wait, it will accumulate, and one day it will rise in ways you cannot control. The archetypes of the psyche tell us that every role has a shadow. The healer has a wound they cannot heal. The lover has a fear of abandonment that burns like fire. The empath, too, has a shadow, the unseen hunger for validation, for love, for being needed. This is not weakness. It is human. But when you deny this hunger, you risk becoming enslaved by it. You give and give, not out of love, but out of fear that if you stop, if you choose yourself for once, you will be abandoned or unloved. This is the shadow's voice, whispering through your unconscious actions. In my work, I have met many who believed they were good because they avoided conflict, because they always put others first. But goodness, true goodness, is not born from self-erasure. It is born from wholeness, from knowing the light and the dark within you and choosing consciously. If you do not know your shadow, your empathy will be tainted by unconscious motives. You will give, not because you want to, but because you do not know how to do otherwise. And that, my friend, is not freedom. That is bondage. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing in a vast forest at night. The trees are towering their shadows, dancing under the pale light of the moon. Somewhere in that darkness, a figure is watching you. It is not a stranger, it is you, the part of you you have left behind. It calls to you, not with words, but with silence. With the weight of unspoken truth, will you approach it, or will you turn away? Most people turn away, fearing what they will find, but the empath cannot afford to turn away. For every shadow they ignore within themselves will be projected onto those they love, and they will suffer under the illusion that the darkness is always out there, never within. The journey into the shadow is not a descent into evil, as many fear. It is a return to truth. The empaths, in their desperate attempt to remain pure, often banishes powerful emotions, anger, jealousy, the urge to set boundaries into the unconscious. But the unconscious does not forget. It keeps records more faithfully than the conscious mind ever could. Every unspoken no, every repressed scream, every moment you wanted to protect yourself, but instead chose silence, all of it lingers in the depths of the psyche. Over time, this reservoir of denied energy begins to shape your life. It seeps into your relationships, twisting them. For the unintegrated shadow always finds a way to emerge. Consider the archetype of the martyr, so often celebrated in stories and myths. The martyr gives everything believing that their suffering is noble, but what is rarely acknowledged is that this archetype carries a shadow of resentment. The martyr does not give purely. They give with an unspoken contract, expecting to be recognized, to be loved in return. And when the world does not reward their sacrifice, they feel betrayed. How many empaths live like hidden martyrs, quietly resenting the very people they seek to save? This resentment is the shadow crying out, "See me, I am tired, I want to live for myself." When I speak of the shadow, I do not mean to vilify it. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It holds the keys to the parts of you that have been buried under layers of conditioning. For the empath, the shadow often holds a raw, unpolished power, the ability to say, "I will not carry your pain anymore. I will not dissolve myself to soothe you. This is not cruelty. This is self-respect." To reclaim this power is to awaken from the dream of self-sacrifice that has kept you small. But how does one confront the shadow? It is not enough to think about it. To theorize, the shadow must be experienced, felt, integrated. This is why dreams are such powerful messengers. In dreams, your conscious defenses crumble. The persona, the mask you wear in the daylight, dissolves, and the deeper truths of your psyche emerge in symbolic form. Perhaps you dream of being chased by a dark figure, or standing on the edge of a cliff, or finding yourself in a room that feels both familiar and threatening. These are not random images. They are fragments of your shadow calling to you. They say, "Do not run from me. Look at me. I am you." Imagine an empath who dreams of drowning. They wake up gasping, their heart pounding, but they dismiss it as just a nightmare. What they do not see is that the dream is showing them how deeply they are submerged in the emotions of others, how their own identity is dissolving. If they ignore this message, they will continue to drown in waking life, overwhelmed by the energy they absorb from everyone around them. But if they listen, truly listen, they may realize that the dream is a call to rise, to breathe, to step back and find their own ground. I once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. For the empath, this truth is a lifeline. If you do not confront the shadow side of your empathy, you will be ruled by it. You will continue to attract people who take more than they give, who see your light but not your wounds. You will continue to mistake your own self-abandonment for love, but when you turn inward, when you dare to see the shadow, everything changes. You begin to understand that true empathy is not about absorbing the pain of others, it is about witnessing it without losing yourself. Let me share with you a story. A woman once came to me speaking of how she could feel the emotions of everyone in her family, her workplace, even strangers on the street. She was exhausted, depleted, and yet she believed this was her duty to be the emotional sponge for the world. I asked her, "Why do you think you must carry what is not yours?" She was silent for a long time, then whispered, "If I don't, I'm afraid I will be useless. I am afraid I will not be loved." There it was, the shadow, hidden beneath her compassion. Her empathy was not born only of love, it was born of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being unseen, fear of confronting her own needs. Until she faced that fear, her empathy would remain a prison rather than a gift. There is a dark mirror in all of us, a reflection that does not lie. When you dare to look into it, you may see the parts of yourself you have tried to keep hidden, your selfishness, your longing, your unspoken rage. But if you turn away, you remain incomplete. Wholeness is not achieved by clinging to the light alone. It is achieved by embracing the totality of who you are, both the light and the dark, the saint and the shadow. For the empath, this means reclaiming your right to exist for yourself, not just for others. Do not mistake this for a call to abandon your sensitivity. Sensitivity is a gift, but only when it is rooted in strength. An empath who has not faced their shadow is like a candle in the wind, flickering at the mercy of every gust. But an empath who has embraced their darkness becomes like the flame of a torch, steady, fierce, illuminating the path without being extinguished by every passing storm. To become this torch, you must be willing to descend into the depths of your own soul. You must ask yourself, what do I fear about my own power? What would happen if I stopped trying to save everyone and chose to save myself? The path of individuation is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. And wholeness requires a marriage of opposites, light and dark, conscious and unconscious, empathy and self-respect. This is not an easy union. It will test you, it will strip you of your illusions, it will demand that you look at the ways you have betrayed yourself in the name of love, but in the end, it will give you something far greater than the approval of others. It will give you freedom. When you begin to understand the shadow side of your empathy, a profound shift occurs within you. It is as though a veil lifts, and for the first time, you see the intricate web of projections that bind you to the suffering of others. You begin to ask, whose pain am I carrying that does not belong to me? Whose voice is speaking through my heart, guiding me to overextend, to give, to dissolve? You see, the empath often carries the wounds of their family, of their ancestors, of collective history. Their sensitivity becomes a vessel, but without awareness, that vessel becomes a cage. You may think you are feeling others, but in truth, you are often feeling the unhealed fragments of yourself reflected back through them. The unconscious loves mirrors. Life will constantly mirror back to you the parts of yourself you have not yet claimed. For the empath, this can feel like an endless cycle of meeting people who are broken, who need saving, who remind you of your own forgotten cries for help. Perhaps you are drawn to those who are emotionally unavailable, those who take without giving, those who demand without ever recognizing your depth. This is not a coincidence. This is the shadow at work, pulling you toward the lessons you must learn. It is whispering, see how you abandon yourself, see how you give everything you wish someone would give you. In my studies, I often encountered individuals who wore masks so tightly that they had forgotten the shape of their true face. The persona, this socially constructed identity, is necessary for survival in society. But when you identify with it too strongly, you become trapped. For the empath, the persona is often that of the caretaker, the healer, the endlessly kind soul. They are praised for their selflessness, for their ability to endure. But beneath that mask lies a deep yearning to be seen not as a giver, but as a whole being with needs, desire, and boundaries. And the more you hide that yearning, the more the shadow will rise, demanding to be acknowledged. Dreams of masks are common among those who have lost touch with their authentic self. Perhaps you dream of wearing a mask that you cannot remove, or of others around you wearing masks with hollow eyes. These dreams are not random. They are your psyche's way of saying, you are hiding, you are forgetting who you are beneath the roles you play. For the empath, this message is crucial. If you wish to embrace your gift of sensitivity without being consumed by it, you must remove the mask. You must dare to say, I am not only what I give to you. I am not only the comfort you seek. The shadow side of empathy often emerges as suppressed anger because the empath strives to be kind. They push their anger down, believing it is wrong to feel. Yet, anger is not inherently destructive. It is a force of life. It is the voice that says, I deserve respect. I deserve to exist. When anger is denied, it does not vanish. It festers, turning into bitterness, passive aggression, or self-sabotage. I have seen empaths who are so terrified of their own anger that they will endure unbearable situations, staying silent, believing that if they just love enough, things will change. But love without boundaries is not love. It is self-erasure. Imagine a river that flows freely. It nourishes the land. It brings life. But if that river has no banks, it will flood, destroying everything in its path. Empathy without boundaries is like that river without banks. It overwhelms. It drowns both the giver and the receiver. The shadow side of the empath teaches you the necessity of those banks, boundaries that do not close you off, but instead give your love a direction, a strength. Without them, you become lost, drained, and resentful. With them, you become a force of nature, both powerful and compassionate. I ask you now, what does your shadow look like? Have you ever dared to sit in silence and feel the emotions you try to avoid, not the emotions of others, but your own? Beneath all the noise, all the giving, all the distractions, there is a voice that longs to be heard. It may speak in whispers, in fragments of memory, in a sudden wave of tears that you cannot explain. This is the shadow knocking at the door of your consciousness. Do not ignore it. To ignore it is to live half a life, always chasing the illusion of being good while secretly aching inside. Many empaths have been taught since childhood that their worth lies in what they can give. Perhaps you were the child who felt responsible for the happiness of your parents, the one who sensed their unspoken pain and tried to fix it. You learned to read emotions like others read books, but in doing so, you may have forgotten how to read yourself. This is the tragedy of the wounded empaths. They give endlessly to avoid the loneliness of their own unmet needs. But there is freedom in realizing that you do not need to fix everyone. You do not need to carry every burden. The shadow teaches you that true compassion begins with self-compassion. The integration of the shadow is like alchemy. It is the transformation of lead into gold. At first, it is uncomfortable, even terrifying. You must face parts of yourself that you have judged, feared, or denied. But as you bring these parts into the light of awareness, they begin to lose their power over you. You begin to see that your anger, your fear, your longing, these are not flaws. They are guides. They point to where you have been wounded, where you need healing, where you need to reclaim your own voice. Consider the archetype of the wounded healer. In mythology, the healer is often wounded because it is through their own pain that they learn to heal others. But if the healer does not tend to their own wounds, they will eventually collapse. The empath is a kind of wounded healer. They feel deeply because they have known pain, because they have walked through the shadows of their own heart. But to truly embody this archetype, they must also turn inward, tending to their own wounds, embracing their own shadow. Only then can their empathy become a source of strength rather than a source of exhaustion. The world does not need empaths who are burnt out and broken. It needs empaths who are whole, who know their power, who can stand in their sensitivity without being consumed by it. This wholeness can only come through shadow work, through the courage to look into that dark mirror and see not just the reflection of others' pain, but the truth of your own soul. To complete this journey, you must understand that the shadow is not a single event to be conquered, but a lifelong companion to be befriended. The empath, in particular, must learn to dance with the shadow, to listen to its whispers instead of silencing them. The shadow is not here to destroy you. It is here to show you what you have hidden in the depths of your soul. It shows you the truth behind your endless giving, your quiet suffering, your silent longing for recognition. It asks you to stand bare before yourself and ask, do I love or do I serve because I fear being forgotten? When you begin to confront these questions, an alchemical process takes place. The pain you have absorbed from others starts to dissolve like fog in the morning sun. As you realize it was never fully yours to carry, you learn to hold space for others without being consumed by their energy. This is the empath's true power, not the power to absorb pain, but the power to witness it with clarity and strength, to remain grounded while the storm rages around you. Yet this power is born only when you face the shadow that tells you to give until you collapse, to stay silent when your soul is screaming. Imagine for a moment a deep cavern beneath the earth. Inside that cavern is a pool of still, dark water. When you look into it, you do not see only your reflection. You see the faces of all the parts of yourself. You have exiled the angry child who was never allowed to speak, the weary adult who longs to rest, the fierce protector who wants to set boundaries but has been chained by fear. The empath's task is not to shatter this mirror, but to enter it, to step into that water and embrace these forgotten selves. Only then will you rise whole, with your empathy purified by truth rather than driven by unconscious wounds. The integration of the shadow does not mean you become less kind, less compassionate. In fact, you become more authentic in your compassion. You stop giving from a place of fear or obligation and begin to give from a place of strength and choice. You recognize when to say no, when to step back, when to honor your own needs. And in doing so, your empathy becomes radiant rather than draining. It becomes a light that shines not because it is desperate to illuminate others, but because it simply is a natural expression of your whole self. You must understand, too, that the shadow side of the empath often carries an unspoken anger toward the very people they try to save. This anger is not wrong. It is a signal. It tells you where your boundaries have been crossed, where you have given too much, where you have betrayed yourself for the sake of keeping peace. To acknowledge this anger is to reclaim your power. It is to say, I see where I have abandoned myself, and I choose to return to me. This is not selfishness. It is the foundation of true empathy for how can you truly feel another if you are disconnected from your own soul. The archetypes that govern the psyche remind us that every role we play has a shadow. The lover has a shadow of possessiveness, the hero has a shadow of arrogance, and the empath has a shadow of self-neglect. By recognizing this, you step into a deeper dimension of your own humanity. You begin to see that your empathy, while beautiful, must be balanced by an equally powerful respect for your individuality, for your voice, your desire. Without this balance, you will forever be at the mercy of the world's needs, forgetting that you, too, are a world deserving of care. The process of shadow integration often begins with small acts of rebellion, saying no when you would normally say yes, allowing yourself to rest without guilt, admitting to yourself that you are angry or tired or simply done with carrying what is not yours. These moments feel strange at first, even uncomfortable, because they challenge the narrative you have built about being the good one. But as you continue, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel lighter, freer, as though the chains of unconscious obligation are breaking. You realize that your worth does not depend on how much you endure, but on how fully you live. The dark mirror of the empath also reflects the collective shadow of society. We live in a world that often praises self-sacrifice while ignoring the quiet suffering of those who give too much. The empath becomes a projection screen for the collective's unacknowledged pain. But you are not here to be a vessel of endless suffering. You are here to awaken, to see that the very sensitivity that has caused you pain is also the key to your liberation. Once you integrate your shadow, your empathy becomes an instrument of clarity rather than confusion. You see people as they are, not as you wish them to be, and you interact with them from a place of conscious choice. In your dreams, You may find that the shadow begins to change shape as you do this work. The dark figures that once chased you may become guides, allies, even teachers. The rooms filled with mirrors may reveal not distorted reflections but hidden strengths you never saw before. This is the nature of the unconscious. It shifts as you engage with it. The shadow is like a wild animal. If you chase it, it will run. But if you sit quietly and watch, it will come to you, showing you its true face. And when you embrace it, you find that it is not as terrifying as you imagined. It is simply a part of you waiting to be seen. So I say to you now, do not fear the dark mirror. Look into it with courage. See the parts of yourself you have called unworthy, selfish, or broken. See the anger you have buried, the needs you have denied, the power you have suppressed. These are not your enemies. They are fragments of your soul calling you home. When you gather them, when you bring them into the light of awareness, you will feel something shift. You will no longer be ruled by the unconscious need to give until you vanish. You will no longer be trapped in cycles of pain that are not yours. You will stand whole, an empath who is not consumed by the world, but who walks through it with clarity, strength, and grace. And perhaps as you continue this path, you will begin to understand the greatest paradox of all, that the shadow is not the opposite of light, but its complement. Without the shadow, the light would have no depth, no meaning. It is through the interplay of both that we discover the full spectrum of who we are. As an empath, your gift is not to choose between light and shadow, but to unite them, to stand in the wholeness of your being, to feel without losing yourself, to give without abandoning your own soul. This is the call of the dark mirror. This is the hidden truth of the empath. It is not an easy path, but it is the only one that leads to true freedom. Look within, embrace all that you find, and when you emerge, you will see that your empathy is not a curse or a weakness. It is the song of your soul, made stronger by the shadows you have dared to face.